Yeah, with anything in any whether it be your own life or a company or whatever, the whole life cycle, it's like people today. Whoever you're hanging out with and whatever decisions you're making today is going. I can tell you where you're going to be in 5 years, and in 5 years you're going to be based on all those things. And so it's really important that people make decisions about who they hang out with, and also make proper decisions today that's going to help them get toward not only decisions, but the behaviors reflect those decisions. So 5 years, they actually start to manifest and realize what they want to realize, that North Star. And so I call those inflection points. And Protus has had a few inflection points in our career. We've had an inflection point in 2001 when we hit a recession. Prior to that, in like April, May of 2020, started a recession. It was a muted recovery. Then September 11th. 2001 happened, and it did not help matters a whole lot. That was a huge inflection point for us because that was our first what I would call crisis in the organization, and we were able to fortunately overcome that period of time by putting our heads down and going after it even harder. Part of that inflection point was impacted by our first inflection point, which was the hiring of Michael Bitar and the fact that, he and I became partners at that point in time back in 1997. And we were able to then articulate and crystallize the personal scorecard and our core values. And we kind of knew what we really wanted to be. We just had a difficult time articulating. We acted through our behaviors reflected it, but it didn't have a way to articulate it. And so that first inflection point was really being able to articulate that, which allowed us to really push through that second inflection point. The third one was 2008 and the financial collapse and crisis that we all are very much familiar with. We actually had our best year in 2008, so we were very fortunate versus many companies across many industries, including our own, where we lost at that time. I think we lost 54% of the firms, what I call business registered firms. 54% of the businesses went out of business in over that 2008 to 2010 period of time. And in essence, our industry was down 52%. We had a great year in 2008, and in 2009, when the industry was down 52%, we were down 31%. And though that was a huge hit to our bottom line, we effectively outperformed the marketplace at that point in time. We also had a team at the time that was a little more mature. As we went into 2009, it's the only year that we actually planned kind of a decrease of our business. We actually said, hey, we're going to work 25% harder this year and perhaps make less money. And that team had been told that they didn't blink. They came, they built their business plan, they came to work. So that was amazing. That was the third inflection point. The fourth inflection point, which is a catalyst to what we are today, in the core of who we are, is the division of labor. As recruitment firms started growing and started doing more business, they started hiring support people, and we did the same thing. And what I noticed is we were getting lift, but we weren't really. The lift was not equaling the capital expense of hiring those kind of support people. And so, we brought a consultant in essence, what we did over that day and a half is create a division of labor from it. We see there's 24 steps in making a placement with our clients. And we took those 24 steps. That's kind of how we started and started breaking them down and started building roles for experts in each, not each of those steps, but in chunks of those steps up to the 24. That allowed for what I would call a production line, very similar to a production line in CPG. And ultimately, that has paved the way for who and what we are today and how we do our business, and has allowed for exponential growth versus just moderate little lift by just hiring more people. Because there's a much different outcome, if you will, and there's a difference between scaling and growing. People think scaling means growth. Scaling means you're hiring a bunch of people, buying a bunch of technology and a bunch of CapEx. That's scaling. You may not grow from that. That's your intent, but you may not grow from that. You have to be very intentional about the way you scale, and that scaling should be in line with also growing your company and growing the way you go about your business. And then the final inflection point is really where we are today, and that's building out our platform. The recruitment industry today is really three buckets. You have the small 1, 2, 3 person shops that can make money, but they don't generally have a platform. They either have to third party a platform or whatever the case may be. Their overhead is low, so they can make good income. But when they're on vacation generally, or they get hurt or injured or something like that, they're essentially out of business. And so there's a little bit of risk there, but it's a good way to make a living, and there is a place for recruiters of like that today. There's the companies that are being investable, might even be raising money from private equity or strategically, so institutionally or strategic money raising, to where they can scale and build out a full platform that can offer up a platform or services to clients and individuals. Those companies will they're going to carry the baton for the foreseeable future. The search firms and firms that are in that mid bucket, where you got 5, 6 people, maybe up to 12, 14 people, you may have a partial platform, but nothing that you can really totally rely on, and so your margins are getting squeezed from the top and the bottom, and you're kind of in no man's land. That's a tough place to be. And so we are committing in our organization. We created a holding company just recently, which is our last inflection point that puts, or our last most recent inflection point, which puts ACE and Protus and any other solution under that one holding company. Gives us a lot of flexibility to attract people into our organization through various roles, opportunities, and opportunity of leadership, and maybe opportunity to share in some of that success. So we've just recently have done that. And then, of course, we're building on our platform. And I see that as being a difference of our success today and what will be our difference in success in the future. The habits have to be very intentional every day. And they're all built around our SOS, the systems of success.